Harry Potter has always drawn a pretty thin line between good and evil. One moment you're cheering for the heroes, and the next you're bawling your eyes out over a particularly bad guy's tragic demise. It's basically like traveling through a portkey, right? 1 second you're yanked from one spot to another, completely unsettling and downright uncomfortable. Heck, Rowling even made us fall in love with bullies. But hey, we get it, real life is all shades of gray. So when you go through this list, you're not gonna come after us, right? Let's put that theory to the test, shall we? If you think there's a little bit of darkness in you too, hit that subscribe button and wait till you see who we have in the first spot. Let's kick the list off with the most ruthless, unpredictable, and shallow beast we have in the wizarding world, Fenrir Greyback. This guy was a pure savage. Greyback wasn't one to shy away from breaking the rules, and definitely not from defying society. So what if he was a werewolf? He knew how to own up to his identity and refused to lurk in the shadows. But that tiny bit of confidence turned into arrogance fast, and he became one of the most violent Death Eaters in the community. All know from the Second Wizarding War, when his dark crimes were exposed to the fans, this monster didn't even wait to transform into a werewolf. He was a cannibal through and through. He was known for especially going after young children, turning them into werewolves, and passing on his curse. He was a danger even when he had full control over his body, and that's a pretty evil trait. We'd be here all day listening to his crimes, but his worst offense was definitely targeting Lupin. Seriously, who hates Lupin? The guy's universally loved. No surprise, Greyback has one of the darkest reputations in the wizarding world. But it wasn't as big as the next one on our list. In a room full of the greatest wizards in the history of Hogwarts, this man manipulated every single one of them, even Dumbledore. This man wasn't just evil, he was an evil genius. Let's take a deeper look. He didn't just know how to cast the 3 unforgivable curses, he actively used them. He placed the Imperius Curse on his father, used the Cruciatus Curse on Neville's parents, and, as a dark wizard, the Killing Curse was probably his go-to move in any battle. And that's just the beginning of his long list of crimes. He kept Moody captive for months without anyone getting the slightest hint. Man even tricked the Goblet of Fire into spitting out Harry's name. That's the stuff of a devilish wizard, and you can't find much like that in the wizarding world. It's as if Hermione turned over to the dark side. But this next pair were no geniuses. They were simply dumb savages. Amicus and Electo Carrow gained a bit of notoriety during Snape's tenure as headmaster of Hogwarts. And no, we're not saying it was the good kind of attention. These siblings were Voldemort's loyal Death Eaters, and their loyalty knew no bounds. To the point that they stuck out their necks for him in both wizarding wars. Their devotion knew no boundaries, so much so that they risked everything for him. Yet somehow these two managed to worm their way into Hogwarts and, unbelievably, were handed prestigious teaching positions. Talk about misplaced promotions. You can imagine how it went down. Amicus was a professor of the Defense Against the Dark Arts, but he twisted the syllabus and only focused on teaching the dark arts. As for his sister, she was the professor of Muggle Studies, teaching the young brains all about how they should hate on the Muggles. None of it was surprising, but Amicus rose up through the ranks and got more hate from the fans than usual. That's because he used the Cruciatus Curse on Harry. In the end, they were both sent to Azkaban after the Battle of Hogwarts, but the next wizard managed to talk his way out of prison. Lucius Malfoy was the sleaziest dark wizard in the Harry Potter world, and you can't convince us otherwise. This guy didn't have the backbone to stick to one side. After the First Wizarding War, he crept his way out of a sentence by claiming that he was under the Imperius Curse. He even blamed the Dark Lord for this fake crime. And boy, Voldemort was not happy when he rose back to power. And that's when he flipped sides again. With Voldemort in the front and a killing curse behind his back, he knew he had no choice. Like a cunning weasel, he slipped his way back into the circle of Death Eaters. His pure blood status only added to his inflated ego, and he made no effort to hide it. He was envious of the Weasleys and Harry, and to top it off, he treated Dobby horribly. Something Hermione would likely never forgive him for, as long as she lives. But say whatever you want to say about Lucius, his moral compass always pointed to his family. Take the Battle of Hogwarts. He didn't care one bit about Voldemort and vanished into thin air with his family. In the end, he even charmed his way out of prison by telling on his friends. We've got one of his friends on this list too, who had a similar story. Wait till you hear about him. If you think we've hit the jackpot with this list, please subscribe to the channel and show us some love. Done? Alright, let's move on to the next one. This man didn't have a big role, but it was enough to tell all about his dark past. During the Goblet of Fire, he is introduced as the headmaster of Durmstrang Institute, one of the 11 wizarding schools in the world. But then, as the story goes on, you find out his dirty little secret. He was a Death Eater in the past. After the First Wizarding War, he was arrested by the Ministry of Magic. In exchange for a free ticket out of Azkaban, he spilled out on a couple of names of Voldemort's hidden spies, including Barty Crouch Jr. That allowed him to turn over a new leaf and work his way into one of the higher ranks at Durmstrang Institute. But when news of Voldemort rising to power started going around, the color of his face drained. You could see the sweat and panic on his face in the movies. He knew he had to trick the Dark Lord into taking him in, so he told on a couple of Death Eaters and got out of getting killed. But that was his last help to Voldemort. During the Second Wizarding War, it was found that he went into hiding in fear of Voldemort. Now, he was not a devil, but he was willing to go to the dark side if only in fear of Voldemort. Call it what you want, but we think that deserves him a spot on this list. This might have been a tough one to judge, but the next name won't leave you in any doubt. If we're talking about cruelty, Antonin Dolohov deserves to be in the #1 spot. He was a monster, and even that's an understatement. During the First Wizarding War, Dolohov was on the front lines, torturing and killing muggles without hesitation. But his brutality didn't stop there. It was Dolohov who played a key role in the deaths of Fabian and Gideon Pruitt, Molly Weasley's brothers. While he wasn't the only one involved, their murder is often described as particularly brutal, which says plenty about the kind of person Dolohov was. But he didn't stop there. He was a vicious Death Eater, and he didn't have any guilt of killing his enemies. No, he was actually proud of himself and his dark crimes. During the Second Wizarding War, he outdid himself by doing something appallingly sinister. When the Golden Trio was stuck at the Malfoy Manor, it was Dolohov who tortured Hermione in the books. He pulled out the good old Cruciatus curse and probably wanted to send her the same route as the Longbottoms. That sounds like a killer on the loose to us, pretty much like the next one on the list. There isn't much talk of Rodolphus Lestrange, but what we do know is criminal enough. What else can you expect from the one who was married to the most ruthless Death Eater of all times, Bellatrix? Rodolphus definitely had main character energy, and not in a good way. You could write an entire book about his evil antics. The most jaw-dropping of all was the fact that he escaped Azkaban not once, not twice, but 3 freaking times! Honestly, he might be the only dark wizard to pull off such a terrifying feat. Let's not forget, Azkaban is a place even the toughest wizards fear. Thanks to those soul-sucking Dementors, am I right? Apart from his daring escapes, he was also a big name during the First Wizarding War. He was one of the most feared Death Eaters. Even talking about him sent chills down the spines of wizards. Do you want to know why? Mainly because of what he did with Alice and Frank Longbottom. Rodolphus was one of the 3 wizards who tortured Neville's parents to the point that they ended up in St. Mungo's Hospital for magical maladies and injuries. Imagine the kind of torture he put them through that they went permanently insane. He's not a guy to joke around with, but unlike this monster, the next wizard on the list will put you in a tough spot. That's right, the one, the only, Severus Snape. Now, a lot of you might disagree with us for putting him on this list, and this might just start a war in the comments, but how about we dig a little deeper and see why he has such a bad reputation? Let's be real, he was a cold-hearted bully to Harry, Neville, and plenty of other students at Hogwarts. But it's his dark past that gives his character that unmistakable shade of gray. During the First Wizarding War, he was Voldemort's man through and through. Maybe it was his abusive childhood or the absence of Lily in his life, but he chose to side with the Dark Lord. But the dark phase didn't last long. After the war, he flipped sides and became Dumbledore's closest ally. He even took on the role of his spy when Voldemort rose to power. But some people may argue that he only abandoned the ship because Lily was killed. Snape was the only one who overheard the prophecy and spilled the beans to Voldemort. The guilt of being the one behind Lily's murder probably took a toll on him. Call it guilt or love, but that's when he called quits on being a Death Eater. Now the question is, would it have stopped if it wasn't Lily who had suffered? He did it all for love, and he was willing to go to the dark side for it. Whether this was an evil trait or not is up for debate, but we will leave the comment section open for you. That's all, folks. Did we rattle your brain enough? Do you agree with our list? Is there anything we left out? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Make sure you check out the first part as well. You might hear a few familiar names there too. Trust me, it is just as entertaining. Lastly, if you enjoyed this video, smash that like button and please subscribe to our channel. While you're at it, press the bell icon to stay updated with the latest news. If you want to keep hearing from the Wizarding World, come back and we'll let you aboard the Hogwarts Express. Well, that's all. I'll catch you next time.